All right, here's the deal. How fast can you set cylinder heads on a small block? We have damage in 4 different cylinders. Fingers crossed. Looks like we're going inside the motor of this one too. I don't see anything obvious. That was a heavy metallic knocking. I expected to see a collapsed lifter or a flat cam lobe or something, but I don't see anything so far. So looks like we gotta go further. It's pretty cool. I don't know if you can see that. Something was happening inside there. What the heck was that? Somebody's got a racing dune buggy I don't know about. Anyway, we're gonna have to get to the bottom of this. We got the heads off. Really disappointing. My brain can't comprehend what happened here. I don't know if it was sabotage. I don't know if it was somebody just messing around and made a mistake. I don't know if I did it. I mean, let's think about it for a hot second. Let's say I pulled the carburetor off and the back 2 washers fell down in the intake. First of all, the Autobrock air gap dual plane has a massive flat spot with serrations. I feel like I'd heard it, number 1. Number 2, it seems like it would have stopped. It wouldn't have kept going clear down to the cylinder. Who knows? But here's what don't make sense. We have damage in 1, 2, 3, 4. We have damage in 4 different cylinders. That means 4 different objects went down this freaking intake, and I can't imagine what that would be, especially since all that's left is this tiny, I swear this looks like a cotter pin. But luckily, aluminum heads absorbed all the damage. I don't know if this one can be saved. We're gonna have to call Blueprint Engines and find out. There's no damage to the valves, valve guides, none of that. So whatever went through here was small enough to go through the valve opening. Really disappointing. So we'll get some gaskets from our favorite auto parts store. We'll get lucky back on the road, try to get it to some track days, because we've got less than 90 days to No Name Nationals. Got to get some practice in. Well, Blueprint Engines gave me some bad news. They don't have any parts, so I'm gonna have to fix these myself. Did a lot of searching online. Luckily, all the damage is contained inside the combustion chamber. I've got it cleaned up pretty good with just Scotch-Brite. People have been using WD-40 in a flat file. Basically, you're just trying to knock the sharp edges off to, you know, kind of get away from detonation. Ow. Wow, I am really surprised. All right. Fingers crossed. I took about 3 days off. I didn't think about cars. I'm just thoroughly disgusted at what happened, but I made some phone calls. I did some internet research, and maybe it's not as bad as I initially thought. So the unfortunate problem is calling up Blueprint Engines. There's no parts. So even if I wanted to replace the cylinder head, there isn't one to buy. So did some research, took everybody's input. Everybody has their own opinion of how to fix this. Actually took a flat file in WD-40 and was able to almost erase most of the damage. Luckily enough, it didn't eat up the aluminum, it just dinged it up a little bit. We've got our new head gaskets laid in place. We've got everything cleaned up as best as it's gonna get. We got brand new head bolts. They have the, what do you call the shit on the threads that keeps the water jacket leaking down? That thing, they got that on them already. 3 different sizes for Chevrolet. Thanks to our awesome new sponsor, Autozone. We got our cylinder heads prepped. Everything's back to go, or everything's ready to go back in order. So let's start the reassembly. All right, here's the deal. No. All right, here's the deal. How fast can you set cylinder heads on a small block? Now they're way over there on the table. They gotta go here in that abyss of an engine bay. What you think? 20 seconds? Let's see. Make sure the camera is centered on the engine bay. And where's my phone? My phone is here. We're gonna go to stopwatch. And go. Come on. Aha, here's one. It's not on. Come on. What's the deal? Somehow I got dirty. 53 seconds. Somebody beat me. Well, I am only 18 years old. I feel like I should take the necessary precautions to make sure the torque wrench is set correctly. You can ask Maggie the next time you see her what she feels about setting the torque wrench correctly. I'm sure she'll appreciate that. You're welcome, babe. All right, so what do you guys do with all your used head bolts? Like, these head bolts might have 1,000 miles on them. I know you're not supposed to reuse them due to some torque to yield, stretch to torque, some horse shit that Mopar doesn't do for some reason. But anyway, if you come up with some ideas for these, let me know. Shoot me some comments down there to figure out what we can do with these. We got a lot of these laying around. I hate to just throw them away. You can see we're super close. We've got the intake on, we got the carb on, we've got the alternator on. We are down to plugs, actually entire ignition system, hook up the exhaust, run the valves real quick, fluids, and fire it up and hope we're good. So when you hear somebody talking about setting the valves, running the valves, checking valve lash, what are they actually talking about? Talking about setting the timing of these valves opening and closing. Very critical. You set the valves too loose, not only will you have valve train noise, but the car will run terrible. You set them too tight, meaning they open too early, you won't have compression at the right time and the engine won't run properly. So it's very critical to get your valve timing correct. All your power is in your valves. So in this instance, we have hydraulic lifters. There's solid lifters, but we're not getting into that today. We're strictly talking about hydraulic lifters. That's what most people run on the street. That's what you're gonna run into in everyday vehicles. So what we're talking about, I have some fine visual aids. This is a hydraulic lifter. So you can see flat part here. It's actually not flat, it looks flat. It rides on the bumps of the camshaft, actually spins while it's going up and down these bumps. These have a hydraulic, these have a hydraulic cushion in there. Basically a spring, uses oil. You can see that amount of movement. So you can actually tune that movement. I've heard in high-powered drag cars, they'll tune the valve timing as like a traction control to take a little bit of power. The tighter the valves, I think it moves the torque lower in the torque band. The looser the valves, more horsepower. To a point, we're talking thousandths of an inch here. So when you're setting your valves, you want to make sure that your lifter is on the base circle of the cam lobe, meaning hence bump stick. The bump, that would be your valve open. That is valve closed. So I've drawn that cross-sectionally like your camshaft here, so you can see that. This is valve closed. You can see the lifter is riding on the flat part of the camshaft. You can see the valve is recessed in the head. Spring has very little tension on it. The spring's job is to quickly return the valve closed. You want that valve to close quickly so you can start building pressure for combustion again. So again, this is valve closed. This is when you want to do your valve adjustment. You don't want to adjust your valve when it's up on the bump of the cam with the valve open. So basically you're setting pressure of the valve closed using that little bit of hydraulic cushion in here. So what you'll do, valve covers off, you'll roll your engine around until the intake valve just opens. That's how you know your exhaust valve is completely closed. I usually rotate it a couple degrees more just to be 100% sure. You will start tightening your lock nut until you feel resistance on the push rod as you're spinning it with your fingers. As soon as you feel resistance on that push rod, I go 1/2 turn more, then you lock the lock down. At this point, we'll rotate the engine around until the exhaust valve just begins to open. That's how you know your intake valve is completely closed, and you'll do your adjustment at that point. Same thing. You'll spin the push rod until you feel resistance. You'll turn 1/2 turn more, lock your lock down. You'll do that for every cylinder in the whole motor. There is a procedure some people have where if you put the motor at 15 degrees after top dead center, you can do like #1 exhaust and #7 intake or something, but that just gets too confusing to me. I like to do each cylinder one at a time. That way I know my valves are perfect. 4-cycle combustion engine, if the exhaust is escaping, the intake can't be open. So I will spin the push rod with my fingers while tightening up the lock. As soon as I feel resistance, 1/2 turn, then I will hold the nut from spinning while I lock my poly lock. And then you'll go back and do 25 foot-pounds at the very end according to Comp Cam's instructions. Open headers, she's loud. She's a little squirrely in third gear on street tires, ain't she? Whew, heck of an ordeal. So that's 2 motors taken down to the short block in just a few weeks around here. It's been crazy. I'm ready for a break, ready for some pool time. But anyway, you can see Camaro's back together. No jeopardy of missing no name, and we may or may not have another surprise for that over there. But we'll get to that shortly. If you've stuck around this long, just want to remind you, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you know every time we post a video. And thanks for hanging out on another episode of The Family's Garage. Take care.